Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I am in my car, I am wearing my Wall Drug t-shirt, and I am about ready to go on a hike, but I figured I would take this opportunity to do my August reading wrap up. So I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in August and discuss what I read, and I want you to tell me in the comments what you read in August, and we're going to make this a quick one because this car is heating up. So let's talk about August. So in the month of August 2024, I actually read 18 books, and I DNF'd 2 additional ones that I started but decided not to read. One of those books was like a reread of a personal self-development one, so we're just going to strike that one off the list and talk about the remaining 17 books plus the 2 DNFs. So let's start with the 2 ones that I started and decided I wasn't going to read. So these were books on my TBR, which I'm trying to get through because it's at like 240 books. And these were ones that I started and decided just weren't for me at this time. I wasn't getting into them. Doesn't mean I won't read them in the future, but I didn't want to read them at this moment. So the first was The Regional Office is Under Attack. I started reading this. I actually brought the book to the beach with me, and I got 3 chapters in, and I just wasn't feeling the female protagonist or the voice that was the first couple chapters. It could get better. I think I was looking for a book that was more along a book I read a couple years ago called The Rook, and I just didn't feel like it was the same vibe. Something was just a little off, so I decided, you know what? There's other books I'd rather read right now, so I'm going to read those, and I'll just leave this book for a different time. So I DNF'd that, took it off my TBR, but I might read it in the future because I'm a library reader, so if ever I want to read it, it's at the library. The next one was one that I tried to read twice already, and I just couldn't get into it, and it was like Tea and Treason or something. It was like a cozy fantasy, which I haven't read anything before. I got like 4 or 5 pages in, and I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling the queen. I wasn't feeling her motivation. It's already getting a little hot, so I'm gonna roll my sleeves up. I just wasn't feeling it, so yeah, I took it back to the library. I think I may return to that one, but for now, I just would rather read other stuff. Now that we've moved the 2 DNF ones off our list, let's talk about what I did read. And they are on this piece of paper divided between nonfiction and fiction. So I'm just going to start with nonfiction, run through what I read and a brief review. And unless I mention, these all have reviews on my channel, so feel free to check them out if you want a more in-depth review of any of these books. I read for nonfiction a lot with regard to the Middle Ages, and I noticed they got a lot of views, so we're going to keep that up, mostly because I'm interested. I don't make money off this channel, so I'm going to read whatever I want. But if I'm having fun reading stuff from the Middle Ages and medieval times, medieval art, and the audience is too, then it makes sense to kind of keep reading that because I'm having fun and people who watch my videos seem to enjoy it, or at least they click on it. So we're going to start with those. First, I read Saints in Medieval Manuscripts. This is like part of this medieval manuscript series that I read. This was by Greg Buswell. I did enjoy that one. It was a brief overview, but it was pretty fun. Then I read 3 books in the Medieval Craftsman series. These books are a little bit older. They're from the early 1990s, but they tend to be good introduction to kind of niche arts. I read Glass Painters, which was quite popular for my channel, Embroiderers, and English Tilers. So I have those 3 from the Medieval Craftsman series that I read. Then I read a graphic history. So this was like a graphic novel sort of introduction to the Middle Ages. It's called The Middle Ages, A Graphic History. That one was super fun. I liked reading it. I felt like it was an ambitious topic, but it covered it to the best of its ability. Did like that one. And then I have 2 photography ones that I read whose book reviews should be out or will be out soon. The first was Driving the Scenic Route, Barnes in Michigan. So this was photography of Barnes in Michigan. This was kind of based off of Indiana Barnes and Backroads of the Midwest, 2 photography collections I read earlier this summer. So I read that one, and Seasons of Sleeping Bear, which Sleeping Bear is like a federally protected area in the United States. It's a dune habitat with some connection to Native American history and myth. So that was another photography collection that I read. All of the books that I've previously mentioned have book reviews on my channel. The only one that doesn't is The Anxious Generation. This is a book about phone use and how phone use can affect children during this developmental period around puberty. This was a fantastic book, 5-star. It's one of those books that you sat down to read, and I read it in one sitting, quite literally, like all 300 pages, and I just intended to read a couple pages. So that was a lot, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I really liked it. It's the kind of book that's definitely thought-provoking. I think we can all agree. I find, I don't know, phone usage, phones have a lot of positives. I'll start with that. Phones have a lot of positives. You feel safer with one. You feel like you can always contact someone in an emergency. But I think whenever there's a big change like this in technology or society, there's also negatives that have to be addressed, and pretending like negatives don't exist isn't really the way to approach it. And I think it's quite clear that excessive phone usage has implications for everyone, including adults. But it seems that these implications could lead to some pretty serious things, particularly when paired with that volatile time of puberty and brain development. So that was the premise of The Anxious Generation. Highly recommend. I had to wait like 4 months for the book to come in on hold because there were like 70 holds ahead of me on the library. So it seems to be a popular book that a lot of people are reading and enjoying. So those were the nonfiction books. Now let's talk about the fiction books that I read. I'm going to start with the continuation in series that I've read. Correspondence from the End of the Universe. That's a manga series about a individual who has been pulled to serve in the creation of the universe, basically, or the maintenance of the universe. It's a manga series. I've read volumes 2, 3, and 4 in August. I also read volume 30 from the Komi Can't Communicate series. I've been loving that series. I will say with that one, the best scene in the book in volume 30 was not about Komi, it was about Manbagi, so you can check out my review. And then Ennead volume 2, which is Egyptian mythology, sort of, I think it was originally started as a webcomic and is now put into a book form. I've been loving that. And I'm trying to get my hands on volume 3, but the libraries are stingy with their purchasing habits. Oh, I forgot a nonfiction book. Sorry. Range by David Epstein. That's another one that I didn't review. That's about how having a broad range of knowledge can serve you in ways that having extreme depth of knowledge might not be able to serve you. Very interesting. The only reason I didn't review that one was because I listened to it on audiobook and I felt like I didn't take sufficient notes to do a thorough job. I feel like that book connects with some ideas I have about the benefits of a liberal arts education, which I received, that I feel like serves me in ways that I can't quite verbalize. So I've been trying to read a little bit about that to see if I can find a way to verbalize how I feel, but this book just contributed to that. I just felt like I didn't take sufficient notes to do a book review on that one, but I do highly recommend that one. Back to fiction. So I had read Correspondence volume 2 through 4, Komi volume 30, and Ennead volume 2. Those were kind of like continuations of series I read. And then the standalones that I read this month, The Tusks of Extinction by Ray Naylor. This was an interesting science fiction book where they took the consciousness of a woman and put her into a woolly mammoth to kind of bring about the revitalization of woolly mammoths. It's quite a short read. I want to say a little over 100 pages, but it was interesting. Give it a read. Next up, Flowers for the Sea by Zin Rocklin. This was a book that took place in a flooded world in which individuals are living on a ship, and the woman who is the only person to have given birth to a baby, a living baby, that is also someone who's not well liked on the ship. So there's a lot of tension and drama, and it does have elements of body horror, so be aware, but I do have a book review if you want to check that out. And finally, I read another book in my challenge to read Hugo Award winners and finalists. This one was The Ship Who Sang by Anne McCaffrey. The chapter in there entitled Dramatic Mission was a finalist in 1970 for Best Novella. I think that's the correct year. But that was a very interesting book. It's about a woman whose like consciousness or whose brain is paired with a ship and they like work together in this sci-fi universe. I've read Anne McCaffrey before, like Were Search and Dragon Riders of Pern, maybe, is that the other one? I've read a couple of Anne McCaffrey, but none of her science fiction. So this was my first science fiction by her, and I was pleasantly surprised. Not the best science fiction I've ever read, but by no means the worst, and I shouldn't have been surprised. She writes good fantasy, so I figured she'd also write good sci-fi. I liked it, and Dramatic Mission, the portion that was nominated as a finalist for the Hugo, was definitely the best section of that book. So there you have it, 17 books to talk about, 18 books total. Far more books than I actually anticipated or expected to have read in August. I feel like I did not read a lot in August. I feel like I went on a lot of road trips and hiking and outdoor adventures. So I'm very surprised I got through this many, and I want to hear how your August went, what you read, how much you read, and what you're looking forward to reading this fall. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to stop filming and turn the air conditioning on in this car and go on my hiking trip. Let me know how your reading went. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.